The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
Welcome to English 4500, the Teaching English Methods class. As part of our collaborative with the Middle Tennessee Writing Project and the Center for Educational Media, we have with us two excellent teachers from Metro Nashville. Cortney Cruz, who is a literacy coach at Jere Baxter Middle School, and Jordan Sims, who teaches 10th and 11th grade at Hunters Lane, and they're going to be talking to us today about backwards planning and implementation.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Thanks.
Do you want to? Okay.
Go ahead.
Like Ron said, or Dr. Kate said, I am Cortney Cruz. This is my 12th year in education. I spent 9 years in the classroom, so the last 3 years I have been a literacy specialist at Jere Baxter Middle School. I am actually an MTSU undergrad myself. I will be starting this weekend on my doctorate here at MTSU. And my favorite text to teach is In the Lake of the Woods, which is actually a novel that Dr. Kane taught when I was in English courses here at MTSU.
Awesome. Hey, I'm Jordan Sims. This is my 7th year of teaching. I've been at Hunters Lane for 6 years now. I teach 10th and 11th grade English. I teach English 2, which is one of the TN Ready tested courses, and I teach IB English 3. I actually just took over Cortney's position when she left Hunters Lane to go to Jere Baxter. So she and I have been teaching, or collaborating together for what now, like 6 years?
6 years.
I guess, 6 years, right. I'm an Auburn University graduate, so did not go to MTSU, but have been working with the Writing Project for a couple of years now, and my favorite book to teach is In Cold Blood. I was so intimidated by it my first few times reading it, and I was really intimidated to teach it, but through teaching that book, I became a better reader, better writer, and all around just a better teacher, I think. On top of that, I also love teaching Persepolis. My students always enjoy the graphic novel aspect of that book as well. So this PowerPoint is going to be set up a little bit like how I would run my classroom. So the very first thing we have are the goals for our class today and what I want you guys to be able to achieve by the time we leave class. So in natural fashion, like it's my classroom, we're going to read these all together, all of us at the same time. Does that make sense? So by the end of class today, I want you to be able to, number 1, engage as a student in a high-quality poetry lesson. Number 2, review the process of backwards planning and text complexity analysis. Number 3, review and understand the intentions of the Tennessee State Standards. And number 4, enhance understanding of how to create rigorous questions and assessments with the standards in mind. Very good.
Okay. We're going to jump right in. This is an exemplar lesson for 7th grade. Teachers at my school have actually done it in 6th grade, so you get in where you fit in, so to speak. What we're going to do quickly is you're going to engage in this text as a student. What I would ask that you do is take notes while you're reading it so you can shift back and forth with your teacher hat and your student hat. So you're thinking about it on different levels. What do you notice about like the strategies that we're using? What do you notice about the text that we're using? What do you notice about the questions that we're asking and how we are asking them? So there's an art to planning questions. There is an art to getting kids to have student discourse about the questions that you're asking. And Jordan's going to read it. You all have a copy of the new Colossus in front of you. And one thing in classrooms that we ask you to do is at least read the text through once with kids so that they can hear prosody, they can hear cadence, they understand the word. You know, they at least are hearing words correctly the first time.
Oh God, hope I pronounce them correctly the first time.
Yes, do that correctly.
Okay. All right, today's poem is The New Colossus by Emma Lazarus. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land, Here at our sea-washed sunset gate shall stand a mighty woman with a torch whose flame is the imprisoned lighting, and her name Mother of Exiles. From her beaconed hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.
Okay. Great job. All right. You got your timer? Mm-hmm. Take about 90 seconds and jot down anything you thought of while we were reading this poem. And these are your copies, so you can write all over it.
Yeah.
Anything you noticed, and this is student hat time. Anything you noticed, anything you want to lift up, but take about 90 seconds to do that. Pencils down or pens down. Okay. You should all be sitting with a partner, except for you. So if you three will just turn to one another, give you about 45 seconds to turn and talk to your neighbor simply about things that you noticed. At the end of that time, we're going to call on anybody randomly to share. All right.
I marked the same. So it's like a sea-washed sunset shall stand, and as a worldwide welcome. That's what I sort of noticed. I wrote, is it the statue?
Nice.
But it's like glows with worldwide welcome, mighty woman with a torch, give me your tired, give me your poor.
Oh, that was the part that I heard us.
It's like, I have heard this before.
Yeah, exactly. So then I had to check the date. I was like, wait a minute, what's the date? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that would have been during the...
It seemed triumphant.
Okay, I'm going to call on one of you in just a minute.
I gotta turn off my dog.
The front row kids. Or either those kids you love or hate.
Okay, finish your conversations.
Those kids that challenge the class and you.
I have warned the front row. I'll wait, tell everybody. I've warned the front row, so we call that warm calling instead of cold calling. I heard what they were talking about, and I said, hey, I'm going to come back and I'm going to call on you. So one of you share whatever it is that you talked about, just briefly.
We talked about how the new Colossus is basically the Statue of Liberty, and a lot of the things that was brought up in the writing, it was America's feeling towards immigration around the time that this was written. Like the bring me your tired, let me see, where is it? Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. It's something that I'd heard before and that she'd also heard before too, that just kind of instantly clicked with Statue of Liberty.
Nice. Awesome. Can I get somebody from this group to share what you guys talked about?
Yes. Something that was brought up in our group is that she speaks strongly, and it's also a very emotional poem, and the way that she talks, she's strong and she's powerful, but she's also welcoming to those that are outsiders.
Okay. A couple of things that I noticed that I want to lift up is that in both answers you reference something from the text. So you made a connection to, you'd heard this before, but you also said, specifically what it was you'd heard before. Same to you. You said she's strong, she speaks strongly, and she's welcoming, and then you highlighted the text. So thank you.
Okay, next slide. So at this point, go ahead and put in front of you with your poem the student question handout. I'm going to go over how we're going to use this today. So all the questions that we would do over the course of 4 different lessons are on this handout. We would never have given students all of these questions at once, ever. But I wanted y'all to have them all. So what we're going to do today is focus on a few of them. We're going to focus on 3 different questions from 3 different lessons, and we're going to engage in a strategy called read, write, discuss, revise. That is one of the strategies we're using today. Read, write, discuss, revise. Up on the screen, I've got today's expectations. So this is what I'm expecting of you as my students today. I'm going to put a question up on the screen. It's also one of these on here. I'll tell you which lesson and which question it is. I'm going to give you 1 to 2 minutes of silent, individual thinking time and time for you to respond individually. Silent. You're not talking about it with your partner. You are simply either thinking, you are responding in writing, you are jotting down notes, or if you have no idea, you're just sitting there thinking. After that, I'll give you 2 minutes to talk with your partner, and you guys can share what did you come up with, here's what I came up with, you'll share your responses. After that, we'll come back as a whole class. We'll talk about a couple different responses. We'll again come and warm call some of you and say, look, I love what you said, please share out. And then I'll give you 1 to 2 minutes to return to your original response and revise it to make it even better. Does this make sense? Okay. So on your own paper, you can do it on note paper, wherever, under your poem, wherever you'd like to put this today. If it were in our classroom, we'd have either a handout for them specifically or probably a writer's notebook, something that they would have. But we would probably not give the students the questions beforehand because we don't want them to be thinking about it. We want it to be an immediate response that we're all thinking about the same thing at the same time. No one's had more time than others. We've all had the same amount of time to think about it. Are you with me? All right, here is your first, oh wait, no, teacher note. Yep, I already said that. So we are giving students a little bit of individual time to think, followed by a confidence boost, followed by a chance to revise. And one thing that I was thinking about earlier as they were thinking to themselves after the poem is that silent, awkward teacher wait time, it is really awkward. And you do have to kind of, what would you say, gain your confidence during that awkward time.
Like, don't talk through the directions. So when you say 90 seconds, give them the 90 seconds, fill in, whatever information, context that they need, and then give them the 90 seconds. Don't keep going. And don't forget, and remember too, and make sure that you are, let them write.
Like an awkward
Let
silence.
them write.
Okay, so here is your first question. This comes from lesson 1. It's question number 2. Reread lines 10 and 11. In these 2 lines, the mother of exile says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Who are the exiles that she is a mother to?" For this one, I'll give you about a minute because it's a little more simple of a question. So take a minute and come up with an answer. When the dog barks, you can turn and talk to your partner.
I don't know how to do it. Sorry.
We'll give you 2 minutes to talk to your table partner and share your thoughts collaboratively.
Yeah. So my dad's actually from Jamaica. So to me, that kind of means like the exiles, they're looking for people who in their own countries have come to a point to where it's kind of like the
I thought that it starts out saying not like the brazen giant, and so it's not going to be like the confident, swaggering people, and I thought that meant like richer, and so
That's
I'm
good.
going out on a limb here, and so I basically put repressed people.
For religious reasons in English.
I did mine too. And
What specifically in the text made you think that?
All that fun stuff.
Yeah. So I think it's very
word your, like give me your. It's kind of like
very clear. You're thinking tired, poor,
It's kind of
masses.
personal, kind of. Okay, I'm going to probably call on you to elaborate how.
Where did you find that in the text?
Where in the
Well,
poem
because I think it's this idea that tired, poor, huddled masses not being
About 20 seconds left.
She's not saying, give me the victims of the pogroms, give me the victims of
And she's in the harbor, an Irish harbor.
We've got a couple of groups that are going to share out for us today, but also, by all means, this is our time to collaborate as a whole class. So if you hear something you like or you want to add to it, feel free to add to it. All right, this table back here, tell us a little bit about what you guys said.
So I initially said immigrants, but I guess more in depth it would be immigrants who are seeking change, who are seeking maybe more freedom and liberty.
Where in the poem did you get that seeking change, seeking more freedom and liberty? What lines pointed you to that?
I guess I'm just making assumptions that if you're tired, you're poor, and you're huddling, and you're seeking to breathe freely, then you would want something different.
Breathing free, right. So clearly they are not only oppressed or struggling, but they are suffocating in some way as well.
Yeah, then she added on to it.
Yeah, what did you add?
I thought that if of your teaming shore they're considered garbage, then that would be repressed people. That would be people that you're not treating very well.
Very nice.
And that's why they want to leave.
Nice. Those are great answers. This table up here, what did you guys get?
We also agree with what that group said, and to add on to what they said, how it says worldwide welcome, we also thought that could be reference to immigrants as well.
Very nice. I just want to lift up that you used a talking stem. So you said, like, I want to add on to what they said. So you're referencing not only the poem, but you're also referencing your classmates. Nice job.
And that'll be something you will have to model and teach your students. That will not be something that they necessarily will come into your classroom understanding. So just a quick exemplar answer. And I wrote these, I guess, thinking maybe like 6th grader brain. I still wanted it to be a good answer, but one that was able to be accessed and interpreted by a lower level learner. So in the poem, the mother of exiles is acting as a mother to the people or huddled masses who are tired, poor, and fleeing their native countries looking for safety from oppression.
Let me build on what she just said before you go into your revision piece. When you create exemplars, you're creating them, like it's an exemplar. It's the best. You don't have to write it at a college level and like blow all your children out of the water, but you want to write it in a way that they are trying to attain to be. So when she said I was thinking like a sixth grader, it's still a really good exemplar that you would want all of your 6th graders writing like.
I also use this as an opportunity oftentimes to throw in new conventions and sentence structures and have my students model my sentence structure when I notice them possibly using way too many simple sentences. And so I might create one that's more compound complex to show them how it can be used appropriately.
Give them 20 seconds.
All right, I'm gonna give you about 30 seconds to go back and make revisions to your original one. What do you want to add? What do you want to change? We'll say 20 seconds here.
Revisions do not mean erase.
They do not mean erase.
Add.
Yes, they mean add.
You can cross things out, but do not erase. I want to see your
want
thinking.
to see your thinking here. All right.
All right, finish your thought.
Moving on to the next question.
Is this me?
Yep, we're going to do 3 questions. And I would probably not do more than this particular process of read, write, discuss, revise. 3 would probably be the max that I would do because it is kind of redundant after about 3 and they'll start getting a little squirrely. Ready for your next one?
Yep.
All right.
Oh, goodness, it's tiny.
It's a long one. This is lesson 3, number 2.
An allusion is a type of figurative language that refers to something that is outside of the text. In lines 1 and 2, Lazarus makes an allusion to the brazen giant of Greek fame. She is alluding to the Colossus of Rhodes. The Colossus of Rhodes was a Greek statue of Helios, the Greek sun god. It was built in 280 BC to celebrate victory in battle. Reread lines 1 and 2. What words does Lazarus use to describe the Colossus of Rhodes? What do these words lead you to envision?
Give you about 90 seconds here on the timer. Individual think time. All right, finish up your thoughts on this question. Give it a minute and a half to turn and talk to your partner and collaborate and share your answers with them.
And pay attention.
So I said, it's not the people doing the conquering that the mother of exiles is attracting. It's the people who have been conquered and are seeking their God-given unalienable rights. And the words that I said were brazen and conquering.
I mean, I picked up the bronze color thing too, but also, I mean, the shameless part here. So, it's very, very bold, very dominant, very large. But the Statue of Liberty, because it starts not like. So Statue of Liberty is modest. It doesn't seek to conquer. It seeks to welcome.
It's prideful and perhaps overpowers.
Which I think is an interesting way to start it.
Why? Why is it interesting to start it that way? Okay. We got to keep up with our time. We got to make sure our students know that when we say a minute and a half, we mean it. I mean it. All right. What group are you going to call in today?
I'm going to call on these gentlemen, please.
Lovely.
Just share one of your answers, or you can kind of mash it all together. It doesn't matter to me.
I guess when we were talking about how the statue kind of represents our freedoms, kind of like the question, or like the statue, the Colossus of Rhodes was created to celebrate a victory. The Statue of Liberty kind of is sort of a trophy for the United States. It celebrates our victory over overcoming, our troubles to become what we are today.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice. All right, this group over here, I'm going to specifically call on y'all because your answer, I almost feel like contradicts mine in a way, and I like that. I like that there's a different perspective spun here. So elaborate on what you guys were talking about with that first line and how impactful it is.
Oh.
Y'all got it.
Okay. You can go for it.
So it was, we felt like the idea of the very bold, very dominant, very large statue, they're saying it's not like the Statue of Liberty is not like that. That it's maybe more modest, it seeks to welcome, it doesn't seek to conquer.
Very nice. Anybody else want to add anything? No?
Raise your hand if you think it's a contradiction, or like they're contrasting. So, okay, raise your hand if you think that they're actually similar to your answer, and I'm not saying it was wrong, but like they're both sort of celebrations of something. Anybody?
Those aren't contradictory, are they? I don't know if those are...
Not contradictory, I meant contrasting. Like, so in his answer, or y'all's answer, y'all were talking about like...
Yeah, but like it could be a celebration. They could be two contradictory ideas, but still both celebrations.
Celebrating. Okay, perfect. I like that. Thank you. I appreciate pushback. I do.
So this
is a good conversation.
This is where, and I mean, I did this strategy this morning with my students, and this is where, after hearing us discuss, I look at mine and I say, well, I don't like mine anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't like mine anymore. The Colossus of Rhodes is described as giant and famous. It is also said to have conquering limbs astride from land to land, meaning the statue's reach spans across shores. The word conquering helps create an understanding of victory. These descriptions lead the reader to envision a mighty and impressive statue that will not accept defeat. And now I'm wishing I had added something about the nut in there. And now I'm like, I would tell my students, I am itching to change my response now. I feel like I could have done this better. So,
take 30 seconds.
Let's make it better.
Add one idea that you heard and either share out or that you see on the screen to your answer. Finish your thought. Okay. We're going to do one more question just to model this. Generally, again, there are like 3 or 4 of these questions that get kids thinking about context, get them thinking about specific lines, get them thinking about specific ideas, all within the text. And then there's usually a focus question, so you want them writing longer than a short answer pretty much every day.
You have the focus questions down below. And at the very top one, I put answer in 5 to 6 complete sentences. So the expectation, I mean, for 6th grade, 7th grade would be, 5 to 10 sentences would be the expectation for them. Would you say so?
Yeah.
I mean, for middle or for high school, I might expect them to write 8 to 12 that day. But yes, the questions I'm asking you are the numbered questions. The focus question, those would be expected to be independently done with a more extended period of time.
Okay.
Next question.
Yep.
All right, last and final question. This is lesson 4, number 4.
Okay. Reread the final line. How does the Statue of Liberty's tone change when she states, I lift my lamp beside the golden door?
90 seconds, starting now.
Yep.
You have about 30 seconds left.
Be finishing your thought.
Never gets old.
Okay. So this time, when you share, need you really thinking about and listening to what your partner is telling you, because you are going to share with me what your partner said. Okay? Not your answer, what your partner said. So take...
I'll give you an extra 30 seconds. We'll give you 2 minutes for this one.
Many other oppressive countries.
Boastful.
She is, I guess,
that America is golden. I put that she's no longer being that demanding figure. Give me all these people. Give it to me.
Glows welcome, mild eyes, but yet the golden door. It's an interesting shift of tone, and it sort of goes back to that brazen giant.
Gold is higher quality. But yeah, that's why that last line confused me, because I mean, I've read this a lot and I always assumed like, oh yeah, that's referring to America. But now that I'm like actually studying it, suddenly I went, wait a minute, she is referring to America, right?
Because now they're responsible for it.
Yeah, it's because now they're responsible.
Yeah.
Gotta listen.
Yeah, there's no reason that golden runs scheme
Winding down. Go ahead and stop it. All right. Stop your conversations or finish your thought really quickly. Let's all come back. Okay. Can you share with me what your partner said?
My partner suggested that the last line is more of Lady Liberty shifting to a more bold and boastful dialogue of declaring America as this great golden door.
Okay.
Boastful. Fan of that.
Sorry, I like to write down your answers. Can you share what your partner said, please?
He said that Lady Liberty is a force that won't back down, is proud, and cannot be moved, in showing that this is what we stand for and this is what I am going to show you.
Okay. Would anybody else like to share what their partner said? Thank you.
What Whitney focused on was that in previous lines, she was focusing more on the past and talking about oppression, whereas she said the last line is kind of a beacon of hope and light and looking toward the future.
I like your answer, because while I think both of y'all had great answers about the ending line, what was, I think, missing was the reference to how it changed. So referencing how it started to how it shifted in the end. And you summarized that nicely. That was good. So again, have our exemplary answer, which now I'm like,
I don't like it.
I don't like it anymore. I try to use words that I, again, thought that sixth graders would get.
The final line, I lift my lamp beside the golden door, has a positive tone compared to the rest of stanza 2. This is due to the fact that the last line is written in first person instead of the second person commands that the rest of the stanza is written in. The first person voice creates a positive tone, whereas when the Statue of Liberty speaks in lines 9 through 13, in the rest of the stanza, in second person commands, she creates a negative, angry tone. The Statue of Liberty's word choice in lines 9 through 13, such as wretched refuse and teeming shore, have angry, negative connotations. In contrast, she uses words like lamp and golden door in the final line, words with positive connotations, to create a positive tone.
If you look back up at the preceding questions there too, it references that the questions were guiding them to think about a sonnet and the structure of the sonnet there. So that answer kind of had that encompassed in there, that they would have that knowledge.
And that's the slight disadvantage of cramming all of this, because you would have these questions, as you can see, like day 1 has, how many questions? 4?
4. There's
4
on every
questions
day
and a
except
focus
3.
question, so that is all that we are thinking about. We wouldn't be jumping around to all of these, like there'd be a central idea, a method to the madness, so to speak, of what we're looking at each day. And then we would be building towards...
We're going to make them go there.
No, the culminative.
Oh, right. Next
Towards
thing.
the culminative.
Here we go.
Culminating writing task. All right? It is on the back, the very back of your handout. It says Lesson 5, Summative Culminating Assignment. We're going to take 8 minutes to begin crafting an answer to the culminating writing task.
And just a side note, this is something that I feel like I haven't done my whole teaching career, but I should have been, is writing exemplar answers to essays. I feel like I created all these essay prompts, and maybe some of them were great, but I had never sat down and written actual extended essays for all of them. And this is one thing I do now. When I assign an extended piece that the students will work on, I create one as well. So we're giving you just a slight bit of time to create your own response as if you're the teacher of this lesson. So we'll give you about 8 minutes.
Or less.
Or less, maybe about 6 to 8-ish. We'll feel it out, and we'll go from there.
It's a lot of writing.
I know. Not a whole lot. But I've been like, okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, no, shit. And then I was going to use something like word choice. Word choice here.
Pencils down or pens down. If you did not finish, we'll give you an opportunity to finish later.
Don't worry about it.
All right. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. So instead of turning and talking again, because this is the culminating or summative writing task of this unit, what we would like for you to do is take, I don't know, 2-3 minutes with a partner, whomever you're sitting next to, and discuss what skills and concepts your students, so students in your classroom, would need to know in order to adequately answer this question. So you're breaking down the summative question into skills or concepts, however you want to think about it, that they would need to be able to do, things that you would need to teach them in order for them to adequately answer this question.
You want to brainstorm independently or talk with a partner, that's fine. Either one.
I will not be grading your essays, so I don't
I will not be grading these. You're fine. Not grading it? All right.
So symbolism.
Grab details from the text without just writing it word for word. And, they might do that. But knowing how to restate it, but also knowing how to cleverly quote it. Being able to actually take things from the text and then use that to back up your
Symbolism. So they're not actually thinking in terms of this is the Statue of Liberty. They're thinking there's this crazy, possibly woman in a harbor.
Okay, standing with something.
Passage can change a piece of work. Like one of the things I kind of see it's strange because it says keep ancient lands your storied pomp. At the exclamation point, she cries with silent lips.
See something.
I think we hit them all.
Would you do that in
1, 2, 3,
like
4,
a mini lesson, or would you
9, 10,
talk
11,
about that?
12, 13, 14. Maybe sonnet structure.
About that, how would you teach your students about something?
But I mean, it's not like a true Shakespearean sonnet.
Maybe with this. Okay, I agree.
Poetic
I
structure.
agree. Depending on where this fit in my unit.
But it's still like protective almost. Like this is kind of a protective
All right,
descriptive like this.
y'all had some really awesome conversations going about skills and concepts that our students would need to be able to adequately access this poem and complete this task. So share with us, anybody, what you and your partner came up with as skills or concepts our students would need here. What do you think? All right, y'all had some really awesome okay, so figurative language, symbolism, great.
Also, maybe a bit of historical background.
Very good.
To understand the impact of the poem.
Nice. Brian, can you elaborate on that? Because we talked about a little bit about the background knowledge that might be needed.
Right, so it might be an opportunity to layer in an informational text to give kind of a sense of the immigrant, what was going on with immigrants at the time of the late 19th century, that immigrants who come in, they would end up at the bottom of that socioeconomic totem pole. So the freedom is sort of conditional and transient, and it's that connection to that golden door. It's the streets are paved with gold.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Yeah. Yes.
They would need to realize the different weight that the words carry within the work and everything, because some of them can be a little bit lighter and more uplifting, while some of them can be more heavier with a iron fist.
I would have to do connotations.
Connotations,
like that,
denotations. Anybody else? Yeah, last one.
Something we discussed was being able to word a personal opinion and back up it would back it up with information from the text, not just restating what was said in the text.
Right, so they're not just slapping a quote in there. They've got to.
You will be doing that a lot. No matter if you teach it once, you will have to teach that almost every time you teach writing. So, right, recognizing that it's not just about the poetic interpretation skills, that there's an element of writing strategy that has to come in here as well, and we've got to make sure we teach our students the tools to produce high quality academic writing. So we'll move on just to a couple things here. Just take a minute, one moment, and I want you to look back at the progression of questions and the progression of the focus questions. So looking back and thinking too about the questions we posed, the first question followed by the second, followed by the third. What do you notice about the progression of the focus questions and how they connect to that culminating summative task? Take a minute, I'll just give you 1 minute to look at that.
You can or cannot write, either way.
Yeah, either way. Take notes, don't take notes, whatever. All right, just really quickly, share with us, what did you notice about the progression of the focus questions or the progression of the questions in general and how they connect to the summative culminating task here? What do you see, what do you notice?
Each question can be pieced together to form something like an essay, like per question, focus question, by the time it gets to the end.
So by the time they get to the end of the culminating task, each focus question has kind of built a different part of it. Okay, great. What else?
I think it becomes more abstract. It goes from being concrete examples like reread lines 4 to 6 of the poem, and then getting into more abstract examples like the tonal change and how does that affect the overall meaning of the poem and whatnot. So
we start with key ideas and details. We move into craft and structure and interpretation. Nice. What else do you notice?
It definitely makes it more digestible.
Especially starting with smaller tasks and then growing on the previous knowledge, then growing on the previous knowledge until you have an essay worth of not only facts, but also opinions drawn from those facts.
Awesome. Yes. Anybody else? I think we all kind of see the progression there of those questions? Yeah. Anything you want to add there? No?
I'm good.
Okay. So
did a great
we're going to take off our student hat and we're going to put on our teacher hat. So this is our post-lesson discussions, and we're going to talk about the rationale of how we planned this and how we decided on the methods and the strategies and the implementation of this lesson. So we're going to start with backwards planning here. Are we familiar with this term, backwards planning? A new term for us.
That's exciting.
All right.
Backwards planning is simply starting with the end in mind. Okay, so we're going to get into some other methods in just a minute about selecting a text and those types of things, but suffice it to say that once you have selected your text, before you start going like, ooh, we're going to do this and we're going to do this and we're going to do this, you want to think about like at the end of this, what knowledge do I want my students to have because of this text? Okay, what do I want them to be able to do or talk about when we are done with this unit? And it's not, I want them to be able to write an informative essay. What knowledge do I want them to have obtained when we're done? Okay, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. Any questions so far?
Does this seem like a foreign concept from previous ideas you've had about lesson planning? No? It really does make sense that you sit down with your text and you establish, what do I want my students to know after engaging in this? And what thinking opportunities does it provide them? What does this text do for them? And that's really where I start thinking. I start with my culminating task. I start there.
And then you work backwards.
So how can I build my questions and build my daily lessons to help my students achieve that goal? Cool. Any questions on that one?
No, I just wanted to lift up what you said. Like, because of the way, like what you noticed is they all build on each other. So a lot of times we tell kids when they do it in the classroom, like, if you do these focus questions and you really consider them and you revise and you do all these things, correctly or you're really thinking, then Friday when we do the last culminating task, like, it's going to be super easy because all you're going to need to do is pull all these little pieces. Anything else? questions so far? Anything you want to lift up?
These next few slides, we'll be talking just about the craft of teaching. The craft of, I've chosen my text, how do I create my lesson, how do I implement my lesson, how do I make sure there's standards aligned. So the actual nitty-gritty of what you will have to do in lesson planning, your methodology of lesson planning. So, your favorite one.
Text complexity. So for a very long time, text complexity was considered simply the quantitative measure. So what Lexile level does a text fall in? Oh, it fell into 9th grade Lexile. I can teach it. That's great. Things that you want to consider when you are selecting a text, okay? Is this text worthy of study? Is it something that, again, is going to build the knowledge? And I mean world knowledge, because I deal in literacy every day, but I can tell you I don't have conversations about symbols and tones outside of the English class. So what knowledge do I want them to be able to talk about after they've read the New Colossus? And the New Colossus is worthy of student time. And I heard a lot of you talk about they need to understand immigration and they need to understand this time frame. You have just built an entirely new world for students because you selected a wonderful, rich text. Okay? Everybody with me on that? All right. I, as a teacher, did multiple reads of a text. The first time I read it, I would be like, ooh, I want to focus on this. And then I might read it again and be like, ooh, I want to focus on this. Or I might get kids and I might be like, my kids at Jere Baxter, who have never left the 10-mile radius that they live in, and be like, I can't be talking about 1883 for them, because they have 1883 might as well be 1945. My dinosaurs were driving cars for all they know. They have no idea. So how do I build their knowledge without giving away everything? And so text complexity is one of those areas where you backwards plan. You've selected a text, you've done multiple readings. Now let me determine what's the most difficult part of this text. Not the easiest part, the most difficult part of this text, and let me teach that to kids. Because if it's the easy part, I haven't built any knowledge for them.
That's one thing that is hard to grasp when you first start planning lessons, is plan your assessments, plan your questions, your lessons around the most complex part of the text. It's going to be harder for students. They're going to push back more. But that's where your learning comes in.
If they're not struggling, they're not
learning.
And I don't mean it's really difficult and they're never going to read, they're never going to understand this. I mean productive struggle. How do I build their knowledge?
And that doesn't mean that we give them questions that are unattainable. That means we scaffold our questions to build, to be able to access something incredibly complex. When I first, thought about this lesson and we sat down and talked about it, I was like, 6th graders no, that's not going to happen. 6th graders, no way. But after looking through it and engaging in it and seeing how the questions build, they could access that most complex part of this text, is that symbolism there. Mm-hmm. They could.
All right, you want to show them that?
Yeah.
You will see text in this tiny, and we'll happily send this out to you. But
the one
sometimes you'll see text complexity in a 4-quadrant style. These are much more specific. So thinking about...
Feel free to snap a photo of that if you can, or we can send it out, whatever you want to do.
Can't make it any bigger right now. But these are qualitative text features. Again, Lexile is quantitative. These are qualitative text features to consider when you are selecting a text. So let's take 30 seconds if you can see this, or can you see it? Is it too far for you? Well, I don't want to read them all to you. But when you sit down and you think about the poem, I would say, what are some features of this that make it complex? I would argue that multiple and or subtle themes and purposes, there are unfamiliar settings, topics, or events.
I like the last one. Any text structure which is less narrative and or mixes structures. I like that one. The mixing of structures is something really big that a lot of the students are seeing right now. A lot of novels are incorporating right now. You're seeing a lot of nonfiction novels and things that are really mixing genres. So that definitely is one of the complexity qualities.
And let me just push back too. Again, if you're reading a text and you go, ooh, this is something that's going to be super tricky for my kids, teach it. Don't go, oh, I really like this story because they're all going to figure out the theme and we're all going to talk about it and it's going to be, they haven't learned anything because they can do that. Okay? Questions about this? And again, we'll get this to you so that you can see it.
We'll also send you a couple other documents that we use to measure text complexity. When I sit down with the text, I have kind of a handout that I fill out little boxes as I'm reading it to decide, okay, where is the language complex? Where is the structure complex? Where is the world knowledge and the meaning complex? Where is it?
Yeah.
And then whatever I have the biggest box of is where I teach.
And kind of off topic a little bit, Jordan and I will have conversations. Like, we're not in the same building. I'm not even technically in the classroom anymore, although I am classrooms all day with teachers. And she'll say, I'm thinking about such and such. And we will sit down. We'll drive.
We'll drive on
separately
the phone in traffic and call each other.
And talk to each other about, like, well, why do you like it? What does that mean for kids? What is that going to look like in your classroom? So having conversations, they're called text talks or whatever, having conversations about a text where you're really fleshing out, like, I don't want to just teach it because it's neat. I want to teach it because it offers opportunities for students.
All right, one more thing, because I don't have a slide dedicated to it, but that makes me think, as a new word teacher, she's been teaching almost double the time that I have. When you go into your classrooms, find a mentor.
Yes.
Rule number one, find a mentor. Find someone in the building who does it well and say, can I learn from you? I came in your classroom every day.
And she'd be like, I would like this.
Let me have this.
And I will take one of these.
Can I have that book?
And I will also, oh, that's good. And she would do that, and then she would sit down with it and she would shoot me emails. Hey, I don't understand why you did this, or what is this teacher move that you're talking, like, how did you do this? Right? And so we talked about it. And I also have a mentor, and I talk through those things with them too. So total sidebar on that, but find somebody that you can talk about teaching with.
Yes. I think that's honestly super important. Okay, so now one of the things that we're going to talk about, and it's not one of the most pretty parts of education, but it is the reality of the world in which we live. And if you plan to teach an English course from grades 3 through 11, 3 through 10, you will have a state test every year. It will come in May. It will last forever. It'll probably crash, and it'll be horrible. But whatever. You have to do it, and then you're going to be rated on a scale of 1 to 5. So that's the reality of the world where we live. Ron told me that you guys have standards with you, possibly. If you do have those, get those out, because I love... Also, like, can you send me this document that you have that has it all? Can I have it?
We
and then I'm going to find some big paper like that?
Print it out.
Okay, I want y'all to use yours, but what I'm going to give you also is what my team and I created. So we took the 9th grade, 10th grade ELA standards, and they're broken down by reading language, reading informational. It's pretty simple. I have the actual standard word here, but then what we created for us as teachers is we created I can statements, or if I had to break this standard down and say, okay, what does this actually mean? What should my students be able to do based on this standard? I created those, and I'm going to share those with you guys. Again, this is the 9th and 10th grade, because those are the grades. That's the grade. That didn't staple.
Here, give me some.
Good old staplers.
Start talking, I'll pass out.
Yeah. Here, I think one page may have been left off there, so sorry. Okay, so just a quick note on standards. They are Common Core for Tennessee. It is Common Core with Tennessee slapped in front. That is literally all it is. If you go look at the language on the Common Core website, it is actually pretty much the same wording to a T. So nothing fancy here. They're broken down into reading literature, reading information, writing language, speaking, and listening. And standards are kind of encompass the skills that students need to adequately understand and interpret a complex text. And this is where I think you can add here too. Standards are not a checklist of terms. They are not a checklist of terms. They are not a checklist of literary devices. They are not a checklist of mini lessons like, oh, okay, I did RIKID3 today. Let me check that off my list. That is not what standards are. They are the language that says what students need to be able to be doing in order to access the new Colossus adequately and interpret it and talk about it in terms of the symbolism and the tone shifts and the structure. It's the skills they need, but it's not a checklist of mini lessons that you do every day. So don't think about standards in that sense. The old SPIs used to be that way.
They did.
But,
and let me add, standards work in the service of a text, okay? Texts do not work in the service of standards. You select a text, and if you've selected a great one, tons of standards will shake out, okay? You don't teach standards for, you don't teach a text to checklist these standards, okay? And so that's what I mean by that. And Jordan's heard it like 15 times in the past 2 months.
Well, right,
Just
because
keep pushing it.
And again, I think this with the shift of how things are shifting in education right now, it's not about teaching a 15-minute mini lesson on what is theme. That's too much. It's too redundant. It's more about putting a great text in front of students and having conversations about theme and writing about it. It's maybe I sit down for 5 minutes and I explain what if I just give them the term theme, but I'm not going to spend 20 minutes on a PowerPoint slide about theme anymore.
When there's no context or there's no text in reference to. So like you teach those standards with the text in the center. You don't say like, oh, theme is this, here's examples of theme. You talk about it with the text right there.
So, but mini lessons, again, can be helpful sometimes. I know we talk a lot about mini lessons in the writing project, and they can be helpful to give students some terminology or just some background info or context that they need in order to better understand the text. But when you're talking about types of characters or character development, it should be taught with the text in front of them. They've already read, and now they're having conversations about that character development, not doing 15 minutes of notes on round versus flat characters, because that doesn't really do them any good. Beware, though, of over-scaffolding. Is this a new term, scaffolding? Are we aware of what scaffolding is? Okay. Beware of over-scaffolding for the standards, because you can over-scaffold in your lessons, and then you take away the learning. You take away the discovery portion of that student's lesson if you have given them 15 different questions that basically tell them the answer at the end already. So beware of that.
Or,
yeah, go ahead.
Or with this poem, you go, have you guys ever heard of the Statue of Liberty? Here's a picture of the statue. This is the Statue of Liberty. This is the Colossus of Rhodes. We're now going to read a poem about it. You've taken away all sense of joy of like having kids arrive at what this is and what they're talking about. Because you're going to have kids who don't know what the Statue of Liberty is, like in terms of this, but they're going to have multiple conversations where they're going to eventually arrive at that. But really, the focus of the poem wasn't necessarily always to be like, the poem is, or she is the Statue of Liberty. Like it was about talking about what the author is doing in this text.
So in terms of planning your lesson, you've chosen your text and you've established now the most complex part of the text. Then you decide, after writing your questions and looking at what part of the text you most want to focus on, that's when you decide which standards will lend themselves to that one. And that's where you make sure that your questions you've asked or the summative you've created, that you've already created, the complex part of the text matches up with one of these. Again, it's not really a checklist, but these do exist. And I mean, I have a document that I'll show you where I basically have the state standards and my students' performance on each. So they do value the standards and they do categorize questions by them. So it is worthwhile to know them and understand them. And it takes time to get to know the standards. So whatever grade level you do teach, spend some time unpacking them, knowing what they mean, paraphrasing them in your own words, because that is it is part of the job.
I would say more often than not, the questions are starting to look like the ones on your handout and not like, what is the theme of the text that you just read? You know, in the old days, it was, I say the old days, the old days, but the questions would be, you could have kids, like the test taking strategy was like read the questions before you read the text and then go find them. That's not how it works anymore. Like they really have to read it and they have to understand it and they have to comprehend it and then they have to go in and like multiple times go back to it to find the answers. which is why it's becoming so difficult.
All right, we have a little challenge for you today. We did not tell you which standards are being used in this lesson that you just did. I want you to take 3 minutes and talk with your partner to decide which standards you think are assessed in this lesson through the culminating task.
Which grade?
It would be seventh grade. 7th grade. So we'll give you 3 minutes. Come up with the standards that you think are being assessed in this.
What else you got?
We're right on time. We might finish a few minutes early, but I kind of think they may have pushed our time back from the. Do you want me to tell them that, like, this is just thinking in terms of any that you're 100% for sure are
Theme or central idea.
Yeah.
This word means this. And analyze this development. Yeah, that one's used.
Okay. Sorry. No, we just realized that the standards are broken down into a lot of different categories. You clearly have the 5 that are the 5 standards that make up all of the standards: reading info, reading literature, writing, language, speaking, and listening. But within the reading, you've got them broken down even further. You've got reading informational and reading literature. And then you've got them broken down even further. You have standards 1, 2, and 3 are reading for key ideas and details. You'll notice standard 1 and 2, pretty much applicable to anything you read ever.
That's good.
Yep. And then you break down to craft and structure. Those tend to focus a little bit more on the craft and the structure of the text. And then you have integration of knowledge and ideas. And those are where they're going to apply it to multiple texts and look at how multiple authors treat similar themes, and also looking at a couple other, integration interpretation ideas. So share with us real quick what standards were assessed through this, through the new Colossus questions and culminating assignment. What standards? What do y'all think?
Anybody?
Shout them out.
Definitely reading standards 1 and 2.
Okay,
As we've already said.
KID 1, KID 2.
4.
CS4. Will you read the standard language CS4 to us, please?
Determine the meaning of words and phrases as they are used in a text, including figurative and connotative meanings. Analyze the specific impact of specific word choices on meaning and tone, including allusions and other text and repetition of words and phrases.
Very good.
Thank you. Anything else?
I think within all of the questions, what we found is that analyze the form or structure of a story, poem, or drama. Standard 5, considering how form or structure contributes to its theme or meaning.
Nice.
We didn't do that here, but within these questions, you spend time talking about the sonnet.
Any other?
We also said 6, which was to analyze how an author establishes, conveys, or contrasts the points of view of different characters and narrators in a text. And we noted that there are technically 2 characters, Colossus and Statue of Liberty.
Very good. RL 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. RL 3 is the only one not assessed in this one because that one directly references characters, character development, and idea development, and that was not quite as present in this one. So this was 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. You can see the questions as well as the culminating task really pushed the students to think about craft and structure and how the craft and the structure of the poem led to theme development. Nice. You guys are experts at this. Okay, so we really only have a couple things left to talk about, and it's just going to be about the methods that we've used today, some of the methods that we encourage you to use, as well as just a little note about question writing. So, Cortney, you want to go? You're starting with this one. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, it's important to consider your text. It's important to consider your standards, but it's really important to consider the method of instruction, so the teacher moves that you're going to do. So how are you getting kids to do the thinking or the heavy lifting? And so that's where the read, write, discuss, revise cycle comes in, and you can do multiple iterations of read, write, discuss, revise. That's sort of the umbrella that different instructional strategies fall under. Because again, you are actually smarter than the kids in your classroom. But if you're doing all the talking and you're giving them all the answers and you're doing everything for them, they will not learn anything. And they will look at you, because this is how they've been conditioned, with their sweet little puppy dog eyes, and they'll be like, please tell me the answer. I just don't know. I just don't know the answer. And then you will feel bad and you will give them the answer and they have learned nothing. They do. They will stare at you. I don't know what class they learned to do that in, but they will stare at you like, I'm not answering the question. You answer the question. You're the teacher, you're smart. So read, write, discuss, revise is, again, this umbrella that gets kids turning and talking. You're giving them think time, because often as teachers we say, what does the word brazen mean? Tell me what the word brazen means. You have given a child no time to think. They can't even collect their thoughts. So if you think deliberately like, ooh, this question doesn't necessarily need a turn and talk or think, pair, share, but I do need to give them, I need to honor students' time to think about their answer. Also, on harder questions, think about like the last question that we, or not the last writing one, but the third question that we did, where I said, you're gonna share your partner's answers. Like the body language in here was like, okay,
Yeah,
what did
like
you say?
you guys
And like you're like feverishly writing down because you knew you're now responsible for holding up or lifting up somebody else's answer. That also provides kids who are timid or struggling or are like just, they don't have, their loss is last year's Easter egg. Like they have not a clue about what is happening in your classroom. You're giving them an in, seriously, you know.
That analogy,
This is my favorite. You're giving them an in into a conversation that they wouldn't otherwise feel comfortable being in. Because really, this is a 6th or 7th grade unit. Honestly, they're doing it in middle school. And kids are really afraid in middle school to look dumb. And they are really afraid in high school to be smart. So giving them the opportunity to always think, to always write their answer down, to always discuss with a partner to some degree is of the utmost in instructional moves. So you're thinking really, really deliberately about how much time it takes to answer this question, what kind of strategy I need to use, because ultimately, like, that's what you're there to do. You're not there to write curriculum, you're there to facilitate the learning.
So just to make sure that we can get through everything, I'll go ahead and put both these up here. Yeah. So I was going to talk about reading instruction methods and assessment instruction methods. So just some things to do when you're reading a text with your students, because you're not always going to be reading poetry. You are going to be reading 6, 7, 8-page articles, and it's tough, and they will push back like they all did today, and it was hard. So one of the things we hope you take away is that multiple reads of a text is a must. Today, my students read Henrietta's Dance. They're going to read it again next class for a totally different purpose. So multiple reads is a must. Don't just read it once and then throw it away. Plan to use it for a couple of lessons here. Chunking is obviously okay for students. Chunking in groups, chunking individually. You reading part, your students reading part. That's okay when you're working with a longer text. Read alouds, I know that my principal pushes back on read alouds. She said they should be reading by themselves, but I'm going to tell you right now, reading out loud to students is incredibly helpful. Like Cortney said earlier, it really helps with reading fluency and establishing voice when the students go to read themselves. I always read the first paragraph of almost every text we start with to try to set the pace and the fluency here. And then the last thing that I struggled with, probably my first year of teaching, I was like, okay, we're going to do 94 different annotations. You guys are going to put a question mark here and a apostrophe here, or a star here,
and a cloud here for a big idea, and here's a light bulb.
You're going to do 15 different things, and you're going to sticky note this. And kids are spending more time on focusing on your annotations than they are reading. So it's tempting to do because they make these really cute little sticky notes that you love and you want to use them, but it distracts students from reading. So be simple with your annotations. Be mindful with your annotations. My current favorite is one-word summaries. Learned that from Deb. The one-word summaries, write one single word at the end of each paragraph that you think encompasses what to know. It's simple, it's easy, it's not that hard for kids to do, and it doesn't take a lot of time. The last thing, assessment methods, you'll notice today that we did all short answer. We didn't really do a lot of multiple choice. We really didn't do a lot of graphic organizers. Sometimes they're fancy, but at the end of the day, we want students to be reading and learning and discussing, and sometimes those graphics, they don't lend themselves to longer answers. The kids see a tiny box, they write 2 words, and that's it. So beware of those graphic organizers as your assessment method. Make students show their revision. That's one thing that I'm working on right now, and I'm having a lot of promise with it. They're showing me their revisions rather than rewriting things. I can see their thinking, and that seems to be helping. And then again, always make sure you complete your assessments that you're giving your kids, whether it's formative or summative. Make sure you complete it. The last thing we have to talk about today is just a quick note on question writing, and this is something that I'm trying to work with my new teachers in my building about, is your degree of difficulty of your questions and the wording. They kind of need to match that T and Ready. They need to match that high level thinking. You don't want these questions to be a surprise. And if the questions that you're asking your students is what color is Gatsby's car, that's kind of an irrelevant detail. I mean, it's relevant if you're talking, I guess, about like color imagery, but it's not really relevant for learning about chapter 2. So be intentional with your questions. We have two different types of questions that we're talking about: establishing meaning versus analyzing meaning. It's okay to have a couple of establishing meaning questions that just make sure that kids comprehended that chapter, but you want the bulk of your questions to be on analyzing meaning. I mean, really, these kind of things we've already covered here today. Once you've analyzed your text complexity, once you've created your summative assignment, then you go back and you start writing your text-based questions that you're going to do for the day, and then you plan your methods around the questions. Do I want them to work in a group? Do I want to make a chart? Do I want them to do this? So I know I'm like, oh.
We can get to the rest of it.
My last part here is just be sparse with creative assessments sometimes. They are fun, they are engaging, but they do not always demonstrate student learning and abilities. I can give you a great example of a horrible one I did.
And Q&A.
So
thank you guys for coming. We're glad to have you today. We've really appreciated talking to you.
Thanks so much for being a great audience, and we hope to hear from you all soon with any questions you have.